The world of theater is full of stars. But just like in the night sky, sometimes we don't see them all. Some are in the wings, some are maybe up over us in the catwalk. Hopefully they're not under the stage, but you never know. In this series, we are going to meet those hidden stars of the theater, hear their stories, and be inspired by them. So join me on this journey here in my state-of-the-art production studio in my backyard as we meet the hidden stars of theater.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the trailer. It's your host of the Hidden Stars of Theater, Jamie Davis. Man, I know you guys make fun of me because I always start by saying I'm excited, but today I'm really excited because we've got a first for my camper. Here in my camper today, we have an international guest. We have an international guest from New Zealand. Never before in my camp, well, I can't say that. The camper is from 1965 and I've only owned it like 3 months. So I would bet, though, that the chances are pretty slim, Martin, that you are probably the first New Zealander to be in the camper. So welcome, Martin. It is good to have you here today.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
And Martin actually is in New Zealand. He's not like a New Zealander sitting in, somewhere in South Dakota or something.
Yeah. We're in the deep South.
You are in the deep South. That's true.
Yeah.
So we're like brothers, man. We're practically brothers because, I'm in the South here in the States, and pretty much the same thing. You are a little farther south, but awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah. Middle of winter.
Yes. Is it middle of winter there?
It is.
Well, I wish I was there, my friend, because that is not the case here. It is in the hundreds most days right now here.
Okay.
Melting.
Yeah.
But luckily the trailer is air conditioned, so we won't get too warm. So it's good. But this is Mr. Martin Searancke. Mr. Martin is a lighting designer, and that's just part of what he does, though. And he has a story that is going to resonate, I think, with a lot of you guys. We've had some other guests recently, Bobby Harrell, and that works with a company called Strand, and Martin has some ties to Strand as well. So we're excited to hear about that. And I'm also excited because you are a guest of first because you're also the first developer we've had.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so I'm excited because that means that some kids out there who might like theater, but they don't really do anything in theater, but they like the computer and they write code. They're going to learn that they could even do things in theater, and they'll learn how you leverage that skill into dealing with what you love. And so just a lot of notes for them to take. But don't take notes, guys. Get popcorn, sit back and listen, because Martin's story is wonderful, just like all of them. And speaking of wonderful, you, our guests, of course, you are wonderful as well. And thanks for joining us. You are the reason we do this thing. Because as much as I love what I do and Martin loves what he does, we know that you're the future. And so we want you to be involved if that's what you want to do, because we need you guys. The arts need you guys, right? I won't get on my soapbox right now. We'll do that later. But I think it's time, Martin, for you to tell us all about you, sir. And we love to hear your story. We love to hear what it is that really inspired you to do what you do. The people, the places, the events, the things that really just kind of molded you into the Martin Searancke that just loves lights. He's a bright guy. Really bad. Really
is that
bad.
the caliber of jokes, basically, for the?
I'm afraid so. I'm a dad. I'm a grandpa.
Okay.
I got dad jokes left and right. So I believe, Martin, people say that's the low fruit, but my philosophy in life is the low fruit tastes just as good as the fruit up top. So why not go for that low fruit first?
Sure.
All right. I will be quiet. I will stop the dad jokes, and I'm going to turn it over to you, sir. The stage is yours.
Well, before we get started,
I
need to ask, what's the red phone connected to? Who's it?
Martin, dude, we can't talk about the red phone. Don't ask about the red phone. Just hope it doesn't ring.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. All right.
Sorry.
Please just
I'm
no.
sorry. That's a bad
Focus on
start.
you. Focus on you. You are our hidden star. You're a star, sir. Forget the phone. It's not there.
Okay.
Let's
All right.
focus on our star for the day, Martin.
Okay. All right then. Okay. Right. So you want to hear my story?
I do.
You do. Okay. All right then. So, like I think just about anybody who's in this industry, they probably did something in high school or in school. And I was no exception to that. But I actually did sound when I was in school. And we didn't have a formal arts program or anything. So this was just like an annual show that the school did. But so I did that. And I always loved theatre, loved being involved in the tech side of theatre. I think it's a really strange, I find it a really strange combination. And I think, to me, it explains a little bit about why people are often so passionate in this industry, is because it's this really unique combination of technical and creative. So yes. Someone like myself, who's very, my wife likes to call me, she calls me a computer nerd and a lighting geek. And I think those sort of go together. So, I'm always loved technology and the putting together of systems and things like that there. So there's a real practical, I'm a very pragmatic person. There's a real practical side to that, which is great. But then it's got this artistic side as well, which is, those are two things that don't often go together. And so I've always loved it for that reason there. But I never pursued it beyond school straight away. So I went out, got a degree in electronics engineering, and then became a software developer. So that was useful, wasn't
it? Where did you go to school, Martin?
I went to a place called Massey University, which is about a 6-hour drive from where I live now.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's out of town. Actually a big agricultural university initially, but yeah, no, it was a good school. So even at university, I didn't really pursue theatre at all down there, and wasn't involved. But what I did is, when I returned to Auckland, I did get involved in a large church, and I sort of cut my teeth in church lighting, which, and I often say this to people when it comes to lighting, church lighting is an awesome place to learn, and it's an awesome test for a console as well, because every day is something different. It's a conference one day, it's a concert the next, it's a theatre show the next. The variety you get, I think, in church lighting is wonderful.
Yeah,
so I got to
the church that I was involved with here even is on television, and so you've even got that aspect of it. So broadcast lighting. So you're 100% on. If some of your students are out there looking for a place, maybe you don't have an outlet through the theater. That's a great place, because I know churches, a lot of them are looking for people to do that. That's not necessarily sometimes one of the areas people want to do. So that's great, a great thought, Martin, and a great advice for kids looking for that outlet. Good stuff.
Yeah, no, so it was really good. And I ended up running a team of people that did the lighting for various events, and obviously every Sunday. And it was there that I learned I learned some great life lessons as far as dealing in this industry. And something that there's a couple of things that I took with me from that experience. One was we had a really great leader. The team that I was involved with that did sound, lighting, audio visual, all that side of things, was run by a guy named Mike Perry, and he was a very inspirational guy. And number one, he had a policy that if we went to a venue, we always left the venue better than we arrived. So that's something I always took with me. But
that's good.
Back in the 90s, of course, everyone had mission statements. That was always the thing people did. And I don't know if we strictly called it a mission statement, but I'll say that anyway. But we had this philosophy, or this mission statement, which was that we did what we did with excellence without the expense of relationship.
That's
the
really
idea
good
being that we did what we did. We wanted to do the best we could do. We wanted to do the most professional job we could do, really slick events. But we didn't want it to cost us the relationships with the people that we worked with and the people that were part of our team and our community there. And I always remember there's one story I like to tell about that. We'd taken over another venue. It was about a 5,000 seat auditorium. So it was a big show that we were putting on. And we were doing, it was a dress rehearsal, and it was only like 5 minutes to curtain on the dress rehearsal. So we had a very small preview audience, but wasn't really many people there. So it wasn't actually show night. But anyway, I had sort of a little while earlier had a bit of a falling out with my head assistant, essentially, for the show. And he'd sort of gone off in a bit of a huff, and I can't even remember who was right or wrong on this. It was probably me. But this guy, Mike, who kind of ran all of this department, I remember him coming over the comms, and because I was at front of house, and he says, "This show's not going on until you go and sort that out. You go and fix that." Good. And he held the show, final dress rehearsal, but he held it for me to go and sort that out. Now, I understand that at a certain level of professional theatre, you probably can't do that sort of thing.
Broadway,
it's not really, we can't be that.
We
can't be quite that touchy-feely at the top level, but certainly the philosophy still stuck with me. And, I think we do what we do often because, one, we're just really passionate about it, but we're surrounded by other people who are passionate about it. And so it becomes that's why theatre is such a community, right? Because it really is, I think it was one of my favorite authors, C.S. Lewis, once wrote, he said that friendship is developed basically in a conversation where it's like, "Oh, you too? I thought I was the only one."
That's awesome.
And I think that's where the community that is theatre is so close and so tight, because it is a bunch of people who all really love what they do. And that's right. If you're in that sort of community, you don't want to screw it up. You don't want to stuff it up by letting petty stuff get in the way. And so, so I try to keep that philosophy with me, that when we do theatre, we want to do the best we can, but we don't want it to we don't want to ruin the friendships as well at the same time. So
no, and that's so important in this, because as passionate people, we're also very emotional people.
Yes.
And at times it's very easy for us to all let our passion and emotions be big, because we're artists, we're performers. So having that in mind, and always, maybe you can't stop the show, but you can go after and make it right.
Absolutely. So what's theatre without a little drama, right?
That's absolutely. The other interesting thing is, this is the second episode in a row. In our last episode, our guest talked about C.S. Lewis as well. So
oh wow.
Just a random fact. It was Karen White Greensburg, who is a dresser for Wicked and Hamilton, but she's also an actress, and she originated the role off Broadway of one of the demons in Screwtape Letters. A great book.
Oh wow.
Great.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is.
So that's the random fact of the day. C.S. Lewis.
Excellent.
We'll see if the next guest. We'll see if go for free. I doubt it, but
it's a challenge. Maybe we're getting this. It's a challenge there. So you've got to find a quote from C.S. Lewis.
That'd be good. Another wall. No.
Yeah. So moving on a little bit. From there, during that time, I started business with a couple of friends, and this was in the 90s. We ended up developing a telecommunications business that became a .com, and went the way of most .coms of that generation. So
not good days.
Yeah. The early 2000s were interesting, but when that all went by the wayside, and I was left in a situation of, okay, well, what do I want to do? Where do I go? What do I want to do? And by this stage, I'd had quite a lot of experience with doing lighting, but it was very much a secondary thing, a hobby, as you would say. And I decided, no, I want to really make a go of this. I want to do something with this. I want to be a designer. I want to, I'd probably done more concert stuff, but my passion was actually always theatre, and so I wanted to move more into theatre. So one of the things I decided is that and I guess this is the uniqueness to a degree of down in this part of the world, probably a little bit more in the UK as well, but I would think not so much in the US, and that is that certainly back then, anyone who was a designer was also their own programmer of the shows. So they operated the boards. Back then, it was very uncommon locally to have those split roles. So I decided I needed a console. I needed to buy a really good console, a console that I really wanted to use and not have to hire. And I always said, one of the, and I'm jumping a little bit here, but one of the marketing things I used to say with Light Factory, which we'll discuss soon, is that I used to say you are better off you're better off if you have to hire a console, you're better off hiring a console that you know really, really well than hiring the best console you can.
Yeah.
So the idea being that if you go and spend your budget on hiring some really, really flash console, and you spend the whole weekend with your head in the user guide trying to figure out how to drive it, that's not going to get you as good a results as having a console that it might not do everything the other one does, but it 100%. And so that was my philosophy. I decided, okay, if I'm really going to do something with this and I want to try and make a living out of this, I needed a console. And I discovered two things. Number one was in New Zealand, there wasn't a lot of money in being a lighting person. and number two, consoles were really expensive, or at least the ones I wanted were really expensive.
Oh yeah, the really good ones are not cheap.
No, exactly. So so what I actually did do is I bought a really cheap console, like it was literally just a fader board. And I decided, hey, I can write something that can turn those faders into doing something better. I'm a software developer. I can figure something out there.
Use them as a controller.
Yeah, exactly right. So I started this little project that got called Light Factory, and I wrote it for myself. I wrote it because I wanted a console that did what I wanted it to do, and so I started writing this. And it didn't take long for me to realize that I could sell it, and so I did. This was very early days of this sort of niche product being sold online. But that seemed to work. I was selling a software product online, people enter your credit card, all of that sort of stuff. And it ticked along. It didn't make a living, but it was selling, and that surprised me just to start with.
Hey, any money coming in, that's a good thing.
Yeah. And I think I sometimes get asked, what was the secret source of the product, certainly in those early days. And I don't know exactly, but one of the things because when I was looking for a console, I was aware there were other PC-based solutions out there. There were other things you could run on a PC to do lighting with. But all of the ones I looked at, what they did is they all made this what I thought was the same mistake. They essentially replicated a console on screen. And so that was great. If you were familiar with the console, it meant that you knew what you were looking at, but it didn't make for what I thought was a very efficient interface in a Windows environment. And so Light Factory was very much a Windows application. And I think the purist console people would have looked at it and gone, well, no, that's not for me because it's not a console. But certainly in schools and churches and people who were new to this coming in, they could start up Light Factory and it would be like, oh, it's a Windows application. It looks familiar. it's got buttons and things that look like a Windows application. And that was, I think that was one of its things that made it fairly successful early on. But like I say, it wasn't making me a living at that point.
Much less intimidating.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to put it. So then what happened was, through a sort of strange series of events, a very good friend of mine actually started a company here in New Zealand that built LED screens. And I did a bit of software development work and contract work with them. I did screen tech work, variety of things. And through contacts in that area, I ended up getting work overseas, getting international work, a lot of work in the Middle East and things like that, doing lighting. Which was great, I was doing what I had actually decided I wanted to do. So, so I set off doing that, and got a lot of great stories out of that there, which we won't go into right now. But yeah, I often say, if you want a lot of maybe this might be something we have to edit out, but if you want really great stories, go and work in the Middle East.
Well, you aren't the first one to mention that, so I think we can say, yes, lots of it. We'll say adventure.
Yes,
lots of adventure, and if you want to build big things too. One of our guests built the largest IMAX screen in the world at the time.
Wow!
On one of his gigs over there.
Yeah.
I forget how big it was, but it was big. It was in Dubai, I think.
Yeah, that'd be right. So
yeah,
and actually one of the things I would say about that is that you're right. I mean, everything's bigger, and so I think one of the largest shows I did in that when I was doing that work was it was about 200 moving lights. It was a stadium, and these days that's not a huge. Well, I'm sure there are some people watching this who still think that's a huge number, but relatively speaking, these days that's actually not out of the ballpark.
That's a lot for me. A moving light for me is when it falls off the batten.
Excellent.
I got a lot of those. I got a lot of those. 10 or 12.
But in doing that, it learned me not to be intimidated by a lot of fixtures. And that is, I think, something that people who are coming up through design, and particularly if you do work in amateur theatre or schools and things like that, there is the idea of designing for a big space and having 300-400 fixtures can be intimidating. And it's like, how am I going to plot that many fixtures and in the time that I've got to do it? And there's lots of techniques and things that you learn, and so one of the great things about doing that work was that it scaled up my world as far as fixtures I was using, numbers that I needed to deal with, and taught me that actually if you get the techniques right and you have the right console, the number of fixtures is not as daunting as it may have seemed in previous times.
Absolutely. It's just experience,
Yeah, exactly.
And are you so these kind of gigs that you're doing, are you actually designing there, operating, doing both?
I was designing. I was doing both. It was definitely a.
And are you using Light Factory?
I had teams, and yes, I was. Yeah, I was using Light Factory. That was part of it. I took Light Factory with me to
spread the love,
to do all of the shows, and there was a real variety of things that we did. We did all kinds of oddball things. Because at one point I was working in Saudi Arabia, and we used to joke about it, and we used to joke about doing original Shakespeare with all male cast,
right? Because
you can't have women on stage there,
right? Oh,
so we would literally have these brainstorming meetings of sort of going, okay, well, what sort of things can we do in this, And there's all sorts of, from bringing in extreme motorcyclists to all sorts of stuff that we did. But
that's fun.
Original Shakespeare with all male cast. That would work.
Yes, it would have to be that. That's true. That's true. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And I bet though that your experience with getting all of those lights, that probably had a great effect on Light Factory, right? Because
Yeah. Yeah. Well, of
the,
course.
the capabilities there. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome.
Well, yeah. Is that a word? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, well, also that's the other sort of marketing spiel I used to, well, I still do, that I always promoted with Light Factory was that it was written by someone who actually uses it, like
Which is
uses it all
important.
the time. And there are plenty of features that have stories behind them. Actually, I'll tell you one story. There's a little known feature in the software. I don't know how much it's used. I do hear occasionally of people using it, but there's a feature of what we call power monitors. And what that allows you to do is when you're setting up your patch for your show, you can specify how much power and what circuit fixtures are on. And then you can open a window called the power monitors, and it will tell you the load that you're seeing on each of your three phases for the building. And then you can also set a limit in there and say, this is the maximum we can go to. And the software will dynamically pull back the grandmaster to keep you under that limit, so that if you have less power going into the building than you have lights in the rig, you can safely run them. And as I said, a lot of these sorts of features, they have backstories to them. And that particular one, I was doing a really small show, and it literally like a small hall, and it had two 32 amp outlets for power, for lighting, which we were using everything.
Oh yeah.
And
you get to that pretty quick.
Well, yeah, you do. But what we didn't realize is that the pole fuse for the building, is that a term you use over there, Paul? Do you know pole fuse?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Probably not everyone will. My dad was an electrician, so I.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So the pole fuse, or essentially the fuse out on the distribution into the building, was only 40 amps. So it couldn't run both 63s. Sorry, it couldn't run 63 amps. This is all at 220, by the way. So if you're trying to if anyone's trying to work all these numbers,
the math,
out,
yes, yeah, but still,
so there's a little bit more power than it possibly sounds.
To put it here, I'll put it in terms that the kids can understand. So coming into the house, let's say it's water. You've got a small hose, and it goes to two hoses that basically are designed to carry more water.
Yeah,
is that fair?
That's fair. That's good. Yeah, and so. Well, we plotted the show and everything was fine. Clearly we didn't actually at any point in the show use 63 amps of power. But then I think it must have been opening night or something like that there. Halfway through the show, someone out in the kitchen decided they needed to heat up the oven for the food, for the after show food. And so they turned that on, and sure enough, we lost a phase in the building, and it was like, right, we need to. And from there, I thought, well, there must be a better way to actually solve that problem and get around that. And
that was a light bulb moment. I think I can add into the software. That's great.
Yeah, exactly. And there is a number of features in there. I tell you, I used to. The other thing I used to do, I've been going to LDI for goodness knows how long. This could be the first year I haven't been in 12 years or something like that. For obvious reasons.
Yes.
And I used to go I used to always go to the seminar called The Art of Programming. And I used to sit in the back with a notebook, and because what it was a whole heap of designers and programmers, people who weren't console manufacturers, who would sit up there and say, I really wish consoles would do. Why don't consoles do? They'd literally sometimes bang on the table, and then like, consoles do this and that and blah, 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 blah. And so I was sitting back and make notes, and because I was a small company and agile, and I was able to just sort of knock that stuff out. And I remember Rob Halliday used to always go on about scene breaks in QLess, so that you could see your scenes, and it's like why doesn't any console manufacturer do that? I was like, that's easy. So. And within a couple of months, we had scene breaks in the software. And so Yeah, things like that we were able to adapt to quickly. And so the product was moderately successful, but like I was sort of focused on this work overseas. And then I came back to New Zealand and I met my now wife. We met the old-fashioned way online.
There you go.
So we actually started talking. I was in Greece, I think, at the time, when we started emailing back and forward. And then when I came back to New Zealand, we met up. And then I went off on another tour. And anyway, I came back. And there was a sort of a fork in the road moment for me where it was like, okay, I could see a future with this woman, and I need to also make a decision. Am I really going to make something of this product, or am I going to pursue more of the design work? The design work would have been probably not, because it was a lot of international work, wouldn't have been as conducive to a relationship.
Yes.
As you could say. Anyway, long story short, I made the decision that I really wanted to focus on making something of actually making an actual real living out of the product. And so
let me help you out, Martin, in case she watches the episode. The main reason you made the decision was,
of course,
her, right?
As I was saying it,
that was as you were saying. That was all of it. That was secondary. You're welcome.
Thank you. As the words were coming out of my mouth, I was like, no, I'm saying this all wrong. But it's like, but hang on, no, this talk is about lighting, not about my relationship.
I understand.
Should I just stop digging? Is that what I should do? Yeah,
it's all right. I told him not to focus on relationships. I said, just keep it business, Martin, whatever you do.
Thanks. So anyway, yes. So I decided I was going to stay in New Zealand to pursue this relationship.
Brilliant.
And as a consequence, yeah. So I put a lot more effort into the product. Let's just put it that way.
Absolutely.
And the world seemed to respond to that, and the product grew and actually did successfully do what I was wanting, which is to make a living out of it, and was going really well. And then how many years ago was this? Probably might be 7 years ago. 6 or 7 years ago, I was exhibiting at a US ITT in Long Beach in California. Mm-hmm. And Bobby Harrell came up to me at the booth and said, are you looking for his quote? Or
I am, yeah. I was trying to remember what episode. Oh, right here, episode 21. Episode 21. Bobby Harrell.
Bobby Harrell. Yep. Yeah.
So you met him at US ITT?
Yeah. So he came up to me, and he had been a sort of a mutual friend, a good friend of mine, Nick Phillips. He had sort of, I think, had a word in Bobby's ear to basically say, you need to go and check out this product. And so I had met Nick through Jeremy, who was the owner of Searancke, Jeremy Collins, who's a great guy, and he was always a big proponent of what we call New Zealand Inc. So New Zealand companies, Searancke was an incredibly successful company in such a niche industry, and little old New Zealand making lights of all things for theaters.
Yeah.
So Searancke was a wonderful company, and Jeremy was always more than happy. It's very sad of his passing a couple of years ago, but he was always willing to help out New Zealanders who were looking to try to establish in markets. And he introduced me to Nick, who is based in Houston, and Nick ended up introducing me to Bobby.
Yeah.
And so just giving the right people credit there, I think.
No, that's good. It's all about the relationship. It's all about
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely. And so we just got talking, and they were in a position where they needed to revamp their console range, and they needed a next direction for their consoles. And I was feeling for a while that I was at a point with Light Factory where, while it had, I talked at the beginning about how people really liked that it was PC and looked like PC software rather than a console on screen. But it had reached a point where the next obvious market was a console for the product. Yeah. And I didn't quite know how to make that leap. And so the timing was very fortuitous and was perfect. And so we talked for a good year, I would say, with Strand about how this would work. And there were contracts and lawyers, and as there always is involved. And,
all of that fun little stuff.
Yeah. One of my all-time favorite, I think it is an absolute highlight Dilbert cartoon for those Dilbert fans out there, is really simple. And it's like the first cell is there's two guys sitting at a table, and I think it's only two cells. The two guys sitting at a table, and the first one says to the other, well, these 5 bullet points look absolutely perfect. We'll just run this by our lawyers, and we'll get back here in 8 months once they've got a document. And then the second cell is just the other person with their head down with a sigh coming out of their resignation of knowing that the person was telling the truth.
Absolutely true. Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah. So anyway, we talked with them, and there was a lot of work we had to do with the product to massage it into that console format. There was also a lot of Strand philosophies that we needed to adopt. So there has been quite a path that we've taken, and from a development point of view, it's been a lot of work. I got to work really closely with Bobby. Bobby introduced me to barbecue, which I am just the biggest fan of. We now do have a barbecue scene down here in New Zealand. It's emerging. It's good. But boy, I do love my trips to Texas too. And I'm sure Oklahoma has some pretty good.
We do. I think better than Texas, but it's not a thing. Man, that's all over the state, right? You got Kansas City style, you got the Carolina style, West, And I have a smoker myself. Good on. Yeah.
Well, sorry, and I didn't mean this to sort of tangent off into a barbecue talk, but it's kind of weird. So brisket, I really love the brisket up in the US, and when I have brisket here, it's good, but it's different, and it's just not quite right. And what it is, it's like the history of barbecue is that it's almost like it's the worst cuts of meat cooked for a long time.
Right.
And I don't mean to sound really arrogant here, but we basically can't get bad enough cuts of meat. So essentially, our brisket has too much almost like built-in flavor. But that in the case of smoked brisket, that's not a good thing.
It's not, no.
It overrides the flavor that comes from the smoking process. So
I'll tell you what, you send me a good New Zealand steak, and I'll send you some cheap Oklahoma beef.
Awesome. Hang on a second. Well, sorry. Again, I really don't mean to dwell on this. I'll tell one more story that this illustrates my point a little bit here about the New Zealand agricultural scene, because we're a big agricultural country. I grew up on a farm too, so
nice.
I was. This is years and years ago, and I was in London, and I was in the underground in London there, and you stand on the platform, and on the other side of the tracks are posters, advertising billboards. And there was a billboard for Anchor Butter, which is a New Zealand brand of butter. And the billboard was just a picture of a cow standing in a field eating grass. And the slogan was, Anchor cows eat grass all year round. And I looked at this billboard and I thought about it, and it's like, well, what the hell else would they eat? I was so naive, because that's our agricultural scene here. Our cows eat grass. We don't supplement feed very much here. So I was like, what?
Yes.
Anyway,
And
we should get back to lighting.
well, we should. But then we have shed light on the agricultural side. And that's all right.
Yeah,
That's good.
a
Because
little
we
bit.
must be well-fed light designers. We'll
Exactly.
justify that.
Exactly. So yeah. So continuing the story, but so that's been a really fantastic relationship with Strand and with the people there in the Dallas factory, and we built the Neo console. We're actually just about to look. I've got one here to show. We are very, very much very soon going to be releasing this product. This is a smaller version of the Neo console. It's running the same software. But really looking forward to that coming out. Sadly delayed by COVID, of course, but like everything else. But
so share a little bit more with us about that, if you would, because you know, I believe there's some things about that product that are going to make it more attainable to a lot of our viewership, which is schools, secondary schools, high schools, smaller colleges. So if you can, you know, I mean,
yeah, for sure. Well, probably one of my favorite features, and something that I was very keen on right from the start when we started developing that, is that it can be purchased with or without a processor, and that's the key thing. So if you buy it with the processor in, then it is a full console. Take it out, plug DMX and power in, you turn it on, away you go. But it's the second flavor that I really, really like, and that is that you can buy it as just a wing, where we take the processor out. It just has a USB port on the back that you can then plug into your laptop or another PC, and you get everything. It is the same interface, the 7-inch screen, everything works exactly the same, but you're now relying on an external device as the processor for it. So it makes it's significantly cheaper to buy it that way. That's the first advantage. And second advantage, it means that if you've already got the software, if you're already running Neo PC or Light Factory, you can add this to it and give yourself the physical console experience. And it also it also means that if you're like a school where you already have lots of PCs and laptops and things like that, it's an easy add-on to those situations. So that's probably one of its best features. I think is that dual flavor of the product there.
Yeah, no, I think it's brilliant of Strand to do that, right? I mean, it would have been easy for them to just say, no, if you use our console, you've got to use our software preloaded. But it just makes it so much more, I think, accessible to people. And yeah, good on them and good on you. Yeah. So I like it.
I mean, and it is significantly cheaper purchase just as a wing too, so which is great.
And it's pretty.
It is, and it's light, and it's good. It's a really great form factor. It actually fits. It's actually a 19-inch rack mountable too. It's actually the right width to be.
Nice. Easy to travel with.
Yeah, exactly. So we're excited. That product hopefully will be out at the end of next month. Once COVID stops delaying manufacturing processes and things like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it will be much anticipated now. So that'll be good.
Yeah. So while all of that was going on, obviously I was still doing the lighting work. I've always tried to do a couple of shows a year, and I have been very fortunate that now I am able to do a lot bigger shows here in New Zealand, certainly bigger shows than what I was doing before I left to go and work overseas. And so I am doing Mary Poppins in October, 2nd of October it opens, in probably one of the best theatres, I think is one of the best theatres in this country. And so that's really exciting, and it was very interesting because, and this comes back to what I said at the beginning about the whole passion thing. I'm a very typically upbeat guy, a very positive sort of person, and I was surprised at how COVID-19 affected me mentally. Right. How it really, during our lockdown period. We had quite an extreme lockdown here where was like you could only go to supermarkets and pharmacies. That was it.
That was it.
Everything, it was police would stop you on the street and ask you, where are you going? Kind of lockdown.
Right.
So we had quite an extreme lockdown, but obviously that has also worked because now we are, our only cases of COVID-19 are in isolated facilities where people who have come, New Zealanders who have come home and brought it with them, and they're in isolation.
How long did it take you to get control like that?
We did a level system. So level 4 was like the extreme lockdown. And I think that was, I'm trying to think if that was 6 weeks, 4 weeks. No, it was 6 weeks, I think. And then we went to level 3 and level 2. And now we're at level 1, which is business as usual at level 1 with no overseas travel.
Right.
And that's a little problematic for us because we're an isolated country,
right?
With tourism is a big part of our GDP. So that's not without its issues, but within the country, we're free to do what we want and don't have to worry about the virus. Assuming it doesn't escape isolation. So, but it means theatres and shows and concerts and things like that are back to business as usual for us. And it was I remember when my producer phoned me up to say, hey, the show's back on. We've got a date in this venue. And I was amazed at how that really lifted my spirits. And it was like, wow, this really did affect me. This is like, wow, I'm really excited. So, that was,
and it reminded you how much you love it, right?
Oh, I mean, exactly. Absolutely.
That's wonderful. And I'm a little jealous. I'm ready to get back at it too. Unfortunately, here I won't go into that. So let's talk about theater in New Zealand a little bit. So you kind of explain to us, if you would, what would you, because you've seen both, you have had you've got to travel all over the world, and you've seen theater in West End and Broadway and all of these areas. What would you say, how would you describe theater in New Zealand compared to those?
Well, I'm probably going to do most of my comparison perhaps between the US and New Zealand. I think the UK is possibly a little bit more like New Zealand. And then some places I've worked, it's just like totally different. But one of the things that I still don't have a good understanding of, I mean, I've certainly learned a little bit of the history and of the unions in the United States, but that's just not a thing here. I don't know anyone in theatre who is unionized here. They probably are, but that's how low key it is. You wouldn't know. And we have an attitude that prevails through this country of what we call a muck-in attitude, which is if a job needs doing, you just get in and you help someone do it, sort of thing. So
get it done.
So it would, if someone's building a flat on stage, they could quite legitimately ask the lighting programmer, hey, can you come and hold this flat while I hammer this in or screw this together? And it's like, because if you help me do that, then I'll be finished sooner and you can get back to plotting and have dark stage again.
Exactly.
And, so it's everyone's buying into, look, we're here as a team to just get the job done. Now I understand, like I say, I've learned a lot and I understand a little bit of the necessities of the way the union work happens in the United States. But it's a world that I would struggle with. I don't know how I would work in that. I'm sure I would adapt if I had to, but it's mentally just not the world that I work in, and also you've got in the United States, you almost like Broadway it's almost like a different beast compared to everything else.
Yeah, even compared to national tours. I mean, they're different animals, right? Kind of first cousins, but definitely its own unique thing.
Yeah, and it's like it's a little bit like that early story about, you're working on something at that level. You're not going to stop it to go and sort out a relationship. So it's that sort of thing. So so like I say, I'm very fortunate now that I get to work at what I would consider the top level of New Zealand production, and we so actually some friends of mine produce a lot of shows here and have built up a company that is doing some really great stuff. So,
which is exciting, right? Because I know when we spoke before, my understanding is kind of the history of theater, professional theater in New Zealand, up until kind of this production company, has been international tours coming in. And is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's primarily what we got. So, and there seems to have been a bit of a shift. I can't put my finger on when it sort of happened. Certainly in my younger years, if a professional production came to New Zealand, it was the original producers bringing the touring production to the country. What we started to see is a lot more, I mean, it's not the right term. I'm going to say second tier, but not putting down what they do,
Right.
but second tier producers who are picking up product professionally in Australia, the UK, South Africa even, and touring those to, Hong Kong and New Zealand and Singapore and all of those sorts of countries. And so I'm really impressed with what these friends, Grant and Terry, G&T Productions, they call themselves, which is a great name. Love it. And I really love what they've done, because they're basically, the attitude is, well, why can't we do that? Why do we need to have these producers from Australia or South Africa or the UK bring these productions here when we have the talent and the expertise to actually do it here? Maybe we can take a production the other direction. So
yeah, that's great.
Who knows what then? So
yeah, no, that's exciting. I mean, that's inspiring, because even here in the States, I've always preached that locally to amateur theater. Amateur doesn't need to mean poor, bad,
no,
or right. Yeah, it's a lower budget, but we can still do things with excellence. It's kind of that same thing. Why, there are things that we see in these larger productions that we just say, well, that's because they are who they are, but we can do them too. We just have to pursue how to do them. And no, I love that it's kind of homegrown there and burgeoning, and maybe, and that you're a part of that. And that's why you're on our Hidden Stars. You're a star, man.
well, I also think that, again, this is not strictly accurate, because, we're talking about individuals, but there is sometimes a sense of the professional market looking down on the amateur market.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit like, so let me give you an example there. There is, when it comes to people who are doing training, so I don't actually have formal training, because when I was getting started in lighting, it just didn't really exist. Now there are plenty of formal training courses you can do.
Right.
And I have certainly heard it taught by some of these professional training of, so say you're training in lighting, don't go and do amateur theatre. Don't basically go and give away your craft for free. It's like, well, I understand what you're saying there, but if what you want to be as a designer, that might be true if your ambition is to be a venue manager or a tech or something like that there. But if you want to be a designer, then you need to design as many shows as you can.
Right. And
the best place to do that is in amateur theatre. That's when you're going to get the opportunities to actually grow and design lots of shows. So I don't particularly like that advice. I understand where they're coming from. Someone is training professionally to do this. They need to value their craft, and that is true. But if your ambition is on the creative side, let's say, then you need to get as many opportunities to be as creative as you can.
And without limit. And I think
Yes.
that's an important part of it as well,
Yes.
because when you're on the upper tier, upper echelon, and they're paying you big dollars to use big budgets, you don't necessarily have the freedom to experiment a lot.
Absolutely true.
But you take that craft down to a community theater level or a university level, they're going to let you do whatever you want. They're just going to be happy to have you.
Yes, yes.
And it really is more, I think, of an open slate, which then makes you more marketable on the other end.
Exactly.
Anything, I would say the opposite of, no, I agree with you 100%. That's great.
Yeah.
That's good wisdom. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, it is. I mean, it really is. And one of the things that I love about our guests, all of our hidden stars that we've had, is primarily, I think all of them would agree with you in that there's even some of the wisdom up here from like Tim Schmidt. There are no secrets, and they all talk about their love of sharing with others as much as they can, because they believe that two things. Number one, they've spent the time to perfect their art or get as close to perfection as possible, and they want to help others do that as well. Why wouldn't they share it, right? But also they believe in the future is in the younger generations, and they want them to be as good or better than they are. And so no, you're spot on. That's a great advice. Get out there, share it, learn, but it's as much as you can, right? And find every opportunity.
I mean, you can still make a living in the industry by doing, load-ins and pack-ins and stuff like that there, and paid work, but you're not going to, the sad reality is you're not going to walk out of a university course and get asked to design a show.
Absolutely.
That's just not how it works.
No, you gotta do the hustle. You gotta pay rent as you move up the ladder. Earn that right. And you can do light design anywhere, even in a little camper in your backyard. Do I look good, Martin?
Yes.
No shadows. See, I've got lights, and I did. I mean, in a very simplistic way, I did some light design here.
Yeah.
There you go. And I was going to say, I bet you, being, as your wife says, a nerd and a geek, do you have some really cool lighting in your house? I'm just making a guess here. I'm going to be disappointed if you don't. I'm going to be disappointed, Martin.
Actually, I would say the cool lighting in my house is outside.
That's good.
We did a big landscape project a couple of years ago, and I kind of went all out with that and put a lot of lighting around the place. And so I think the outside, probably from a lighting perspective, looks better than the inside.
See, in my mind, you would just walk in and say, lights at 50%.
Yeah. Oh, I can do that. I do have all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's a lot more off the shelf these days than it used to be.
That is absolutely.
But back when I was a bachelor and I lived in an apartment in the city, and I did have a theatrical fixture with a breakup gobo. That, if I wanted to go mood lighting in my place, I could.
There you go. You turn on the James Brown.
Yeah.
I like it. I dig it.
Yeah.
Well, let's get back to it. So one of the things that I would love to hear from you is, as a lighting designer, what is your process?
Okay.
What is your process?
So I almost exclusively do musicals these days. I do the occasional play, but mostly musicals. So I'm going to talk mostly about that. And really the first step for me is listening to the music and getting a feel for it. It's all about trying to paint a picture of what scenes are going to look like in my head. So I will start off with the music. I will listen to that several times. Was it someone? It might have even been Bobby who said, don't program a show of the music you love, because you'll hear it so many times. I don't obey that rule, but I can understand the point of what he's saying.
Yes.
Yeah, but I'll start with the music and try and get a picture of that, and then obviously read the script so I actually understand the storyline, which generally means that you're correcting your preconceived ideas of the story that you've got out of the music. But that's not necessarily bad to do it that way around. So anyway, and then I guess the third step, which is kind of much smaller than the first two, is to see the venue and start. And again, it's all about starting to picture what the look of the show is going to be in my head, and start picturing scenes. And then as part of that process is obviously talking with set and costumes, and those, starting to get an understanding of
cooperatively
what those are going to look like. And as you start putting all these pieces together, the picture starts to become clearer and clearer. And so it's way down the track before you start putting lights in a design package or something like that to actually. So I actually use Capture for all my design. I find that excellent. Their paperwork that they've done, the work a few versions ago, they really improved their paperwork side of that product, and I love it. It does everything I need it to do. And so when I'm working in Capture, I'm trying to think of how am I going to recreate the pictures of various scenes in my head.
So some of our students, some of our listeners, Martin, may not know what that program is, Capture. So can you kind of just give them a quick rundown of what that is?
Sure. So Capture is primarily, it started as a visualization product. So 3D visualization of your lights, essentially connects to the console, turn a light on, you see it on screen rather than having to have the actual rig. But over the years, that product has grown and is now a very powerful design tool. They did a lot of work a few years ago on improving all their paperwork and their reporting, and I'd say that for the shows I do, it does everything I need as far as getting the information out that I can take to a theater. So
Nice.
It's great. And so I work with that product to then get the images that are in my head to figure out what that's actually going to how that's going to translate to placing fixtures. And well, what I was also going to say is that I think, like every designer, you also have your bag of tricks in the back that you kind of recycle, and
right.
Your common gel colors that you for your conventionals that you're going to use, and that there's a certain front and side lighting system that you need to implement, and so you always start with those building blocks and go, okay, they're there and there. Yeah, and some palette. Yeah, and also I guess a step back too is figuring out what fly lines and things like that you're allowed to use. That's always a big one, because you're never given the fly lines you want. The
designer is going to put something in your way.
Yes, exactly. Well, funnily enough, the show Mary Poppins, the original London production of that, I saw a plot of that, and man, it had one of the tightest fly line sets I have ever seen in a show.
Yeah,
that was pretty insane as far as every line being used. And
oh yeah,
I'm sure there were millimeters between some fly things going on there.
Yeah, so there is a lot going on, because they've got they fly actors, they fly everything.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't think our production is quite that bad. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Very good. So do you start do you kind of dream first as far as fixtures, or do you have an idea of what you're going to have to work with? In other words, do you say, if I could, this is what I would do if I had all of the money in the world and all the fixtures in the world to choose from?
Yeah.
And then you pare down, or do you kind of know what you've got and go from there?
No, I definitely, when I'm doing that picturing, particularly when I'm at the very early stage and I'm listening to the music, I'm picturing with a open checkbook of whatever I want. Because then you ask the question, okay, how can I actually recreate that with reality? So there's a term, I think it's a clever term that I've heard, called design by warehouse. And there is, I think for most people, that there is an element of that goes into a lot of designs out of necessity,
Right.
particularly in AmDram, in amateur
Yep.
theatre. You know, an amateur theatre society will typically have like a room full of lights. So to start with, you got to use those because
Yes.
they own them,
Yes.
and then they'll give you a budget to bring in some extra stuff. In New Zealand, for many, many years, though, even with that extra budget, you were limited. We didn't have access to a lot of variety of fixtures. That has certainly changed in recent years, but in the earlier days, well, to start with, when I was first doing lighting, the only moving lights you could get in the country was Martin gear.
Okay.
That was it. It was just in case no one imported anything else.
Right.
I mean, tours might bring stuff to the country,
Right.
but the only fixtures anyone could hire was, you know, Max, for a very long time. And now that's not so much of a problem. Now, pretty much most of the products out there are available in the country. Not everything, certainly probably not as big a range as you'd get in the US, but most of the stuff is here. But you also, I think, you get to, you know, I have a good friend who actually owns a hire company, so obviously I work with him on every show I do, and he always helps me out and make sure my budget goes way beyond what it probably should.
You gotta love those friends. You gotta love those.
Yeah, exactly.
So you haven't been able to leverage your relationship with Strand and Verilight, fill the place with Verilight.
I have actually managed to acquire a few fixtures from them. A little bit of their demos.
I need them for testing.
Yeah. I wish it worked that way. Unfortunately not. It has occurred to me before about whether or not, instead of basically blowing the budget on air freight.
Yes, no doubt.
But then I still need to actually convince the powers to be to actually let their demo stock be out of the country. And I guess that demo stock is technically supposed to be trying to sell stuff. So
gotta keep Bobby and those guys happy. Come on, Bobby.
Yeah.
Come on, Bobby. Hook him up, man.
Exactly. So for the most part, when I'm doing the bigger shows, I'm very fortunate that I can, you know, to a large degree, decide what I want. But I still do many, many, many shows where it's designed by what I can have or what I already have, and you make that work.
And I tell you, I think for young designers, that's not a bad thing to be limited.
No, not at all.
Because it pushes your creativity, right?
Yeah.
What can I do with 6 circuits and 11 lights?
And even unusual spaces too, you know,
right.
low ceilings. Design something in a low ceiling with a dozen conventional lights. That's actually a really hard thing to do, but it'll teach you a lot about how to get the most out of things. So
yes, and it will teach your actors to find the light.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm in the dark. And move.
Actually, it'll also teach you some pretty creative rigging systems too.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. I've worked in some venues which are really low ceiling, but they've had exposed rafters, and so you're like trying to stick bars up in the rafters and try and get lights as close to the ceiling as you can to just get that little bit of extra throw.
Or you use the shadow. Oh yeah, there's a shadow. It's by design.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
You do what you got to do. So, Martin, how long till you're going to be on Broadway, my friend? Designing a show. That's what I'm going to make that a goal. We're going to campaign
to get me.
Yeah, well, I had an idea this week. After I've done enough episodes, I will have had guests from every discipline. I think we need to find a producer to put up a show on Broadway that's just the Hidden Stars of Theater folks. I even have the writers and lyricists to write it, the composers, the Regano brothers.
Yeah.
If so, you've got the LD, my friend. If we get that show up,
thank you.
You
well,
don't hold
until you interview a better one.
No, it's you. No, it's you. You got it. You got
Yeah, I mean, I think anything
it.
like that is I mean, there would be few designers who don't sort of think about, you know, how awesome it would be to have a show on Broadway. I tell you though, it would be really almost better, I think, in my view, would be to take a project from its inception and work with it all the way through, like over years, and then have it maybe end up on something like Broadway.
Totally agree.
It's the equivalent of someone maybe who is wanting to do concert lighting, starting off with a small band that's
Right.
unknown, and then that band becomes famous and they stay their LD all the way through. That'd be a similar sort of journey that would be pretty awesome. And I think to do that with a show, particularly a show you were really passionate about and really were on board with, would be amazing.
Yeah, it's something akin to being a parent and raising your child and seeing them succeed at the end. That's I totally agree with you there, because when you're in that design, you know, that original conception, there's things there you don't ever get later if you come into the process later. You don't know the history of all of the decisions and every little nuance. And yeah, you're right. That is a special thing. I say like I've done it. You know, the several shows I've done all the way through Broadway, but now technically I do live on Broadway, so we're on Broadway right now. You know, good. I mean, Broadway in a little town, but it is Broadway. Well, this has been a great
fact of the day. What did I learn? The most common street name in America is Second Street.
Second Street, because First Street is Main Street.
First Street keeps getting renamed to something else. Main Street, Broadway. So yeah,
that's it. Interestingly, in our town, Main Street is 11th, and right now it's Blake Shelton Boulevard because Blake Shelton is from here. So, but it says Main Street, also known as Blake Shelton Boulevard. So it's renamed, but not renamed. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's interesting. Second Street. I didn't know that. Now I know. See, look, I'm learning. I'm learning.
Good. It was all worth it.
It was absolutely. All of this was for that. Boom. Knowledge drop. You dropped that knowledge. It's like a bomb out of nowhere. We didn't see it.
No.
Now we're the smarter for it. No, that's good. So I do want, we're getting close to the end here, unfortunately, because there's really a lot more I want to talk about, but we're running out of time. So a couple things. One is, as a lighting designer, and I know you said, you know, you didn't have any formal training and all of that, but think about this. You haven't had formal training as a lighting designer, but you have written a software that is being used by all different size venues. Even I know Disney has used it for some of their shows when they came to New Zealand, maybe other places. I was just reading an article about that. That's amazing. I mean, you know, because you kind of say that, like, well, you know, I haven't had formal training, but so what, man? You're affecting theater all over the world by taking initiative to write a piece of software to do something in the theater world. And I think that's inspiration for all of us, right? Anybody can do it. If you have a talent, put it to work, use it in the theater, and change the way theater is done.
Yeah, and I absolutely love hearing the different projects that it's used on. It's so okay. Here's like a really oddball one way out there. So have you seen the videos of the new Coca-Cola sign in Times Square?
Yes.
Where the things come out?
Yes.
There is a small component of Light Factory running that.
Is there really?
Yeah, it's a module I took out. It's not Light Factory, but there is a piece of code that I took out and wrote for them. They contacted me and I was talking to them and said, oh, yeah, no, that's easy to do. We can just take this component and you can use that. And so that says there's a small part of Light Factory running that screen.
So what I'm hearing is you've made it to Broadway.
Oh, hey!
I mean, come on! You lied to me. I said,
I'm sorry.
You said no. You have made it to Times Square, the biggest, arguably one of the biggest stages in the world.
Wow! Thank you. I actually hadn't connected those dots in that way, but
Well, I do what I can.
But I'll take it. I'll take it. So
No, I mean, that's amazing. Who would have ever
Yeah.
thought when you started writing it for yourself? If
I
somebody
know.
would have said to you, someday a portion of this is going to be powering Coca-Cola, a little company, they're
Yeah.
on in Times Square, you would have laughed probably.
Yeah.
And yet
Probably. Yeah.
here we are. And now, not only that, but you've made it onto the Hidden Stars of Theater. I know.
Well, I mean, and that's absolutely
Oh,
the highlight. So
yeah.
awesome.
Oh, I am honored to have had you here. So before we're done, and a couple last minute things, but I always want to give an opportunity. Is there anything, pardon me, anything that we haven't talked about that you think would be good for, a kid coming up, or maybe even a middle-aged guy who found himself without a job and, looking for something in life? Don't know who that would be. And we're thinking about, I would love to pursue lighting design. What would be your recommendations to them as they're starting out? Skills to learn or things to do?
I would say if it's lighting, I would say learn some consoles. I think that's important, because even if you don't plan or want to be a programmer, it's still, knowing the capabilities of the design tools, that I think that goes hand in hand. If it's design that you're after, don't be afraid of going into the amateur world to get that experience and to start playing with ideas. That would be one of my biggest suggestions there. And don't underestimate relationships in this industry. This is an industry of really passionate people, and you will always find that people want to talk about our craft, and that that makes it easy to network. That makes it easy to build a network of people that you can learn from and you can talk to and you can to grow with. So this is a community, this industry. Yes, it seems big, but relative to any other industry, it's tiny. And so it's a very small community in many ways. And I think you really see that actually when you go to USITT. That's one of the reasons I really love that show, that trade show, because that really illustrates to me just the community element of what we do. So
yeah, and hopefully next time that happens in person, I'll see you there. I'm hoping to make that an LDI the next time they're live.
I was gutted the Houston one was cancelled because going to Houston. got friends there.
And good barbecue.
And good barbecue. See, I got that round the right way.
You did. That's great. Well, down to my last two questions. And this one is my favorite question because I love to hear people's passion behind what they do. And you're obviously passionate about what you do. And so I would love to hear, Martin, what is it that drives you? If you can kind of, let us know what that secret sauce, the thing that just really gets you excited and jazzed about doing what you do, whether it's through, the design side or Light Factory or whatever it is, when you stop and think, this is why I'm rip roaring ready to get back at it. What do you think that is?
Actually, it's a fairly easy one to answer because I put it pretty much in every bio that I do for a program. And I actually don't have it in front of me, but so I get this right. But I love drawing every last piece of emotion out of the story being told.
Nice.
And that's what I think lighting does for me. So whether it's a play, musical, concert, anything like that, the stories primarily draw emotion from us. They want us, whether it's a comedy or a drama or whatever, it's all about trying to draw an emotion from the audience. And I feel that lighting is like that little bit of icing on the top that just drags out that last little piece of emotion from the story being told. And I love that about it. You know, I love a good, you know, here's my geekiest comment of the day. I love that cue. When you hit that cue and the lighting state changes in a way that you can just know changes the energy in the room of the audience. It's like the audience really is drawn into the emotion of why that cue was there.
It's almost an audible gasp.
Yeah.
Boom. Because you really are. I mean, you're like an artist painting with colors and hues and tones, and you are paint, and you completely can affect an individual. You can change an entire scene, no matter what the actor's doing. You can change the emotion by changing the light. And that's beautiful.
Yeah,
that's you. And truly an artist, my friend. Truly an artist.
Wow, I try.
So I said that we're just. I realize there's something that I meant to bring up before we get to the Wall of Wisdom. The Wall of Wisdom is coming, and I know you're ready for that. But there's something I don't want to. I want to be sure to mention about Light Factory, because again, you know, I want schools to elevate the excellence within their programs as much as possible, right? And one of the things that I believe I understand, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. You know, if I have a simple DMX light control system at my school, right, and I want my lighting kids to begin to learn programming, some of those things. Can't really do that with what I have. As long as it has the ability to connect to a laptop, I can take Light Factory and basically expand that simple system into a much more not complicated, but a much more advanced and sophisticated. There's a good word. A much more sophisticated lighting system. Is that fair?
Yeah. Well, actually, so the very first name for the product was called DMX Expander, because
there you go.
It took DMX into the software and expanded my little 48 fader board that I had, and expanded that to you know, multiple universes. So yeah, so you can take a fader board, you can plug that via DMX into Light Factory, and then those faders now become handles to whatever you want to program within Light Factory.
Yeah, and that's amazing, because then you really can set those kids loose and let them begin to learn programming and experiment with that, and do a lot more for your shows.
Yeah. Well, and actually also, sorry, I'm going to do another plug for this here.
No, do it.
Another great thing. This is actually, this console, I wasn't part of the decision in this. It just sort of turned up like this. I was like, oh, well, that's cool. It has a DMX in port on this here. So if these 10 faders are not enough for you, and you have a nice big fader board, an old fader board, you can plug that in, and those faders can
be controlled by that.
Be controlled by that. So
wow.
Yeah, so that's quite cool.
That's great. And go check it out. I'll have the link below to Light Factory. Go check it out, because you know, we're talking about it, I'm sure in your mind, and I know, I'll be honest, you know, in my mind, I'm thinking cost-wise is going to be probably out of my budget, but it's not. You will be surprised at, well, I won't give it away, because I want you to go look, because you need to go check it out. But it is incredibly affordable, that you can get into the beginning of it for less than a fixture easily. It's very, very, very cost effective, and thank you for doing that, for making a cost effective version for those of us who don't need, you know, I don't need Broadway show stuff, but to be able to do that is incredible. So well done, my friend.
I did it for myself first. So.
Well, we thank you for taking us along on the ride. All right, so I've got my gaff tape, I've got my paint pen. All I need from you is a nugget of wisdom to put on that gaff tape, to put on the Wall of Wisdom. So, what's going to be for you, sir?
I am going to go with the one I started this talk off with, which was excellence without the expense of relationship.
Excellence without the expense of relationship. I like it. And you gave us some explanation here, but just refresh us a little bit. You know, we know what that meant in kind of in your amateur world there at church, but how you would say even, you know, in the professional world as much as you can, right?
Yeah, it basically means, I mean, to a degree, it's another way of saying don't burn bridges, to a degree. You know, it's about, again, it comes back to this being a small community, really. The people, a small community of people who are really passionate about what they do. And so, you know, cherish the relationships that you form in what we do. And so do the best job you can, do excellent productions, do stuff as professional as you can at the highest quality, but don't let it ruin relationships at the same time in trying to achieve that.
That's absolutely right. And that's good. And I got it right here. You're going to go on the wall. And I know you already pointed out the wall is full. So you're going to actually, we've got a bigger wall coming. So you're going to spill out a little bit here, but that's okay because it doesn't take away from the wisdom, and it still is technically on the wall. Maybe I should just start saying the flat of wisdom, right? Because we've run back of the flat here, but we're going to put you right here. Boom.
Excellent.
Right above in the screenshot, is that right above the red phone that we're not going to talk about, Martin?
What?
And some guys. Just kidding. Well, the last thing we do is something that I love to do, and that is this, because you, sir, are a hidden star. You truly are a star. You're not hidden anymore. We've outed you to the world. Everybody, all the millions of people, or at least my mom who watches this, are going to know about you. And so, and well-deserved to be known. But one of the things you don't get to do, all of the shows you've worked on, you've never got to take a curtain call, right? And you deserve a curtain call because you are as much a star as that leading actor, as those chorus members, and you deserve this, my friend. And so it's kind of a suspension of disbelief. You got to recognize or imagine that I am the millions of adoring fans who've been to all of your shows and love your light designs and would not have had the same experience without your light designs. And so this is your curtain call, Martin. Woo!
Thank you. Thank you.
But honestly, thank you for taking the time out of your day. You could have done anything, and you chose to spend it with us, and that means a lot. It really does, because you're a big deal, man. You're a star.
It was a pleasure doing this. It was great. Thank you for what you're doing too. It's awesome. It's
well,
awesome.
Thank you.
And
it's my privilege to get to do it. It really is. It's a lot of fun. You know, I like to tell people I could be digging a ditch. This is a lot better than digging a ditch. Although I did dig a ditch this weekend, but that's a different story. Yeah. Well, hopefully, Martin, you and I will get to enjoy some barbecue together sometime. I would really look.
And I'm going to take you up on that for sure.
Absolutely. We need to get you some good Oklahoma barbecue. I'm just saying. Skins barbecue, Pigskins in Ada, Oklahoma. If you're ever in this part of the world, which you never will be. If you are, it's an accident. You took a wrong turn. But if you are, I'll buy you lunch at Pigskins, and you'll love it. Good brisket is
that is
primo.
Worth it. That is worth a trip there, I think.
There you go. Well, and thank you guys for being, our faithful guests. Just blown away that you would all join me here in this camper. It's amazing we can all fit in the camper because it's not that big, but it's cozy. It's cozy, and it wouldn't be without you. And we love you guys. Remember, theater is about all of us as a community. And so as Martin has admonished us, and he's exactly right, be a good part of that community. And it is too precious and time is too short for us to argue and bicker over things that are pointless. And that gets in the way of our art. And we are a small enough community as it is. And so let's cherish one another. Let's make good theater together. And just enjoy this thing because it is magic. You may not be a big star yet, like Martin is, but you can be. You can. He was a farm boy. He was a farm boy in the hills. Were you in hills or was it plains?
It was hilly. Here's a word for you to pronounce. It's a Maori word. It was a town called Mangataroto.
Mangataroto.
So there you go.
Say it again.
Mangataroto. That was the town that I grew up in. Yeah.
I grew up in Kanawha.
Okay.
It's similar Native American word means string of beads. That's what it means. They saw the railroad tracks literally and named the town. Said, it looks like a string of beads. Kanawha.
Well, this was named Valley in the Hills. So you're right. It was in rolling
Nice.
hills. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, look, we're done with the episode. We're still learning, everyone. How awesome is this? Listen, guys, if you haven't done it yet, I don't know why, but you need to go down and like, subscribe, comment, click the little bell, get notifications when all of our episodes come out, because you know you're going to want to see them. And tell all of your friends about it, because we want them all to know, because we want everybody to know about our stars, because they are deserving of being known, right? They're not hidden anymore. We're bringing them out. We're showing them to the world. But I guess that's it. I'll stop talking now, everybody. I just love this so much, and I love you. Have a great day. We'll see you next time right here on the Hidden Stars of Theater. Bye-bye.